Is Mr. Jordan from Ohio for 5 minutes of question.
I thank the chairman. Who cares more, Ms. Weingarten? Who cares more about a child's education, the teachers union or the child's parents?
I would say that Mr. Jordan or Representative Jordan, teachers, parents and teachers care about kids. Obviously, parents care about their own kids more than probably anyone else, but teachers and parents are real partners in children's education.
Okay, that's fine. So you would say, but I ask you, who cares more? You would say parents.
Well, parents care. Look, I'm not here to be in a competition. Parents are so important in children's lives.
No kidding.
Teachers are so important in children's lives
I agree.
too.
Why'd you repost and praise the op-ed that was in the Washington Post? Parents claim they have the right to shape their kids' school curriculum. They don't. And then you posted that and you said this was a great piece that people should read. Head of Teachers Union praises op-ed claiming parents don't have a right to shape their kids' curriculum. You really believe that?
The headline of that op-ed was not appropriate compared to the actual work in that op-ed. The work in that op-ed talked about, if you actually read that op-ed.
You disagree with the headline then?
No, I disagreed with the headline. The work in that op-ed talked about how parents and teachers have to have a role in kids' education.
So should the headline have read, parents claim they have a right to shape their kids' school curriculum? They do? Should that have been what the headline said?
I don't, Mr.
Well, let me ask you,
Jordan,
let me just ask you straightforward. Just let me ask straightforward. Do parents have a right to shape their kids' curriculum?
Parents have a right to have a role in their kids' curriculum, yes.
Who are the extremist politicians? You did 25 pages of your written testimony. You had 14 pages. Your law firm had, I think, the other 11. And right at the end of the main body of your written testimony, before you get into the issue of today about the consultation you guys had with the CDC, you say in this last paragraph, attacks by extremist politicians have undermined teachers in schools.
Well,
who are the extremist politicians?
I think you just heard one, sir.
So Ms. Green's one of them.
I think. Look,
okay, that's what you think.
I think the issue is the culture wars that are going on in schools right now, banning books, undermining teachers.
How about this statement? I don't think parents should be telling schools what to teach. You just told me a few minutes ago you didn't agree with that sentiment. Is that a statement from? That's a statement from a politician. Is that extremist?
I believe that parents have to have a role in kids' education. And in fact, when I was teaching at Clara Barton High School, we had parent engagement all the time.
Who said this statement?
I would bring, if you want me to finish, I'll finish. I, like so many other teachers, used to do, I was a high school social studies teacher. I know you were a wrestling coach. I was a high school social studies teacher.
My wife taught, our kids went to public school. We appreciate good teaching. My high school coach, had a huge impact on my life.
I know, and I honor that.
Same here.
But we, so what I would do, and so many other teachers
But I
do
ask you a specific question. I don't think parents should be telling schools what to teach. Do you know who made that statement?
I don't know.
September 28, 2021, candidate for governor in the state of Virginia. You know who made that statement?
I don't. Are you talking about Mr. McAuliffe?
I am talking about Mr. McAuliffe. He made that statement. Is that extremist? Is that an extremist political statement?
In fact, what I did, Mr. Jordan, was when I heard that
we know what you did. You endorsed him and did a six-figure ad buy. Your organization did 18 days later.
When I did, Mr. Jordan, is when I heard that statement, I called Mr. McAuliffe and I told him I disagreed with him.
But it wasn't enough to get you to not do a six-figure ad buy for his campaign.
Well, what the ad buy did was do what we thought Mr. McAuliffe was, which was really supportive.
That same paragraph on page 12. I just got a minute. Same paragraph on page 12. You say most Americans disapprove of the culture wars that have saturated education policy. Who started the culture wars?
I know that when you have banning of books, like a book about Anne Frank, like a book about Roberto Clemente, like a book about Ruby Bridges, that's wrong.
Those who think, let me ask you this,
those things were in Florida.
Who think boys should compete against boys in sports, or those who think boys can compete against girls in sports, which side started the culture war? Which one of those positions?
Sir, I am talking about, when I talk about the culture wars, I am talking about things like book banning. I'm talking about things like stopping teachers from teaching honest history.
Is it starting a culture war if you think literature should be age appropriate? That's not
I
starting a
believe
culture
that
war.
literature should be age appropriate too.
Okay. I'm out of time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Although we're pressed for time because of votes, I now recognize Mr. Gomez from California, but I would recommend, and we've discussed this with the ranking member in the past, especially if you're waving on, you be here on time. And I know we all have schedules to keep, but go ahead, Mr. Gomez.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Really appreciate it. So I think there should be broad agreement we shouldn't ban books. Like, that's just flat out pretty simple. But I believe my colleagues on the other side of the aisle want to distract and rewrite what happened over the last several years. Everything from the COVID response to the massive tax cut that they gave to the top 0.1% in this country. They want to change a lot of the narrative of the last, not 2 years, but 4 years from before that when President Trump was in the White House. So I want to kind of focus on issues that I think the American people really care about. If they cared about children, why are they attempting to cut federal child care funding by 22%? That's what their budget would do. And why do they want 200,000 children to lose access to Head Start and 100,000 children to lose access to child care? Working parents are spending nearly as much of their income on child care as they do on housing. As a new parent and founder of the Dad's Caucus, I can tell you one thing. Our child care system is in crisis. Not only is it unaffordable and inaccessible, child care workers, who are predominantly women of color, are severely underpaid and overworked. Meanwhile, the Biden administration and congressional Democrats have consistently acted to protect child care across the country. For example, the Biden administration invested around $39 billion from the American Rescue Plan to help child care providers keep their doors open. These efforts have helped 220,000 child care programs, which employ over 1 million child care workers with the capacity to serve nearly 10 million children. Additionally, the president's budget would expand access to affordable, high-quality child care by enabling states to increase child care options and by lowering costs so that more parents can afford care. The president's budget also funds a federal-state partnership that provides high-quality, universal, free preschool to support healthy child development and ensure children enter kindergarten ready to succeed. Meanwhile, congressional Democrats led the fight for increased child care funding in last year's spending package, securing $8 billion for the Child Care and Development Block Grant, an increase of $1.9 billion above the fiscal year 22 enacted level. And before that, House Democrats passed Child Care is Essential Act, which would have appropriated $50 billion in federal child care funds. Ms. Weingart, how does adequately funding our nation's child care benefit our children's development and growth?
So thank you for that question, Congressman. All day long, I've been talking about how teachers teach kids. I am glad that in this pandemic, thank God, it did not affect children the way it affected adults. But it's the teachers that teach kids. It's the bus drivers, it's the school nurses. But we need help. And so when we have Head Start, when we have community schools, when we have all these things that look like they're on the chopping block now, it's going to make it harder to teach kids. It's going to be making it harder if you cut Head Start for kids to have a Head Start when they get to kindergarten. And so when you cut community schools or the guidance services, all these things that we need for kids now because of their development issues, because of suicidal issues, we need this help. We can't do it alone. We asked for during COVID for teachers to be safe and have clear guidance to have them safe. We wanted to be in school. I've said that over and over and over again today.
And I appreciate that. Two of my siblings are teachers, and San Francisco Unified, they teach, for a long time until recently, they taught a dual immersion Spanish-English.
Yeah, right.
And if you ever had a teacher in your family or sibling or mother or father, people recognize that they give everything. Oftentimes, because they don't have enough resources from their own school, they subsidize the supplies for their own students. If they see a student without a coat, they give them a coat. If they see a student without, that they need a little extra help, they'll go out and give a little extra help on their own time. Not because they're getting paid, but on their own time. And that's what the teachers have done for our country. So I really appreciate it. I yield back.
I would now like to yield to Ranking Member Ruiz for a closing statement, if he would like to make one.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate giving a closing statements. I think we heard a lot from both sides of the aisle. I think we have very clear differences in methodology and what we think are priorities for this select subcommittee and what we want to focus on. I do want to say some things because we heard from physicians throughout this hearing that, and I also want to remind folks, I am a physician and a public health expert, and social distancing has been a long-term public health basic way of lowering transmission for deadly airborne viruses. It's not only shown in literature, but it's been practiced and retrospectively and studied even from the great influenza pandemic, that if you have a virus that spreads through droplets from your mouth, the louder you scream, you cough, or you even speak, you have micro droplets spreading from your mouth. So the further people get, the safer they are from transmission. So at the root basis of keeping people safe from airborne droplets, people were asked and sometimes regulated to stay far from each other. So I really want to defend public health and public health practice and say that in the event of a novel airborne deadly pandemic, social distancing is one of the crude and also rudimentary public health measures to keep people safe. But what we want to do for the next airborne deadly pandemic is that we want to create safe environments so that people can socialize, so we don't have to close the school, so we don't have to do these things to keep students apart from each other. And I think that's what we should be focusing here today.
Exactly right.
We should be thinking ahead for that next airborne deadly pandemic on how can we save lives, how can we lower transmission, and how can we keep kids safely in schools so we don't need to practice the social distancing that has shown to work. So look, the charge of this select subcommittee is to understand the COVID-19 pandemic so that we can prevent and prepare for future public health crises. Our mission is to get ahead of future deadly novel viruses with the potential to devastate our communities so that none of us have to endure another pandemic. Yet today, instead of doing the critical work or the work of addressing learning loss from the pandemic, that's what most parents are concerned about today is my child's mental health and the learning loss. What can we do today to help these children? Or the work of bringing relief to Americans' youth facing a mental health crisis. We rehashed Ms. Weingarten's emails and her organization's common sense feedback on school reopening guidelines. Guidance that, as you may recall, led to 95% of schools returning to in-person learning just 1 year into the Biden administration. Look, we all agree that the pandemic took a serious toll on our nation's kids. The question is, what are we doing to help our students and their parents? You know, hyper-partisan investigations do nothing to repair this harm, and neither does an extreme Republican budget that proposes deep cuts to the very programs intended to enrich our nation's kids and help working families get by and provide the mental health necessary to recover. Programs like Head Start, WIC, IDEA grants, and more, all of which will be gutted by Republicans' Default on America Act. So let me be clear. Republicans cannot claim to be serious about protecting our nation's kids and families while pushing devastating cuts to programs that pave the way for children to grow and thrive. In fact, those cuts do the opposite. They make the problem worse. They hurt our children and our families. And it is my hope that going forward, the work of the Select Subcommittee will focus on the facts and lead with the purpose of developing the forward-looking policy solutions to the challenges facing our nation. There is still time for us to change course, to discard the partisan allegations, the vilifications of individuals and organizations, to make partisan accusations and investigations intended to score some points, and to put people, because this is what we must do, we must put people over politics and work together to save lives, now and for the future pandemic. Thank you.
I thank the ranking member, and I think he knows, as we have been friends for some time, we have the same goals. There may be policy debates. We hear, oh, this group doesn't care, that group does care, and I care more than you, and all this type of stuff. The bottom line is, this committee would not have even been formed if we didn't care.
Right.
That's why this select committee was formed. So weed through all the stuff you may have heard today from many ways. Our goal is to be prepared next time. And you know what? Next time, we may have a pandemic that affects kids more than adults.
Correct.
And how are we going to be ready for it?
Correct.
And that's really what we're after. We have 2 years to do this. It's a short time, and there's so many topics to cover. So I hope that as we go through the process, understand the things that were mentioned we need to talk about. We plan to talk about all those. What programs are actually working? It's our job for oversight to decide how much are we spending on things and where is the money going and is it actually having a return on investment? Because that's a smart thing to do.
Of course.
So, you hear things today like, oh, you don't like these guidelines. As I said to you, the guidelines that I questioned you about as being accepted, I agreed with them. I didn't have a problem with them. That wasn't the issue. So I hope that you can see that we are working towards finding the process, understanding the process, make sure that we can do things smartly in the future. That's my goal. That's why I wanted to accept this job when asked to take it on by the Speaker. Look, my family, I've got teachers. And I can tell you, I know my teachers from kindergarten through 8th grade. I still know their names. And I still get together with my 8th grade teacher. They mean a lot to me. Even at my age, he's still hanging on. But, so we, over and over again, like we heard implied that I was against those things. I wasn't. I just wanted to understand the process. And we've had hearings here with the school nurse associations
Yes.
represented, and we've had good discussions. Now, one of the things you said, though, is you saw much less transmission in the schools. And so me, as a scientist, as a doctor, I'm like, well, then why are you wanting to base things on community rates? That didn't make sense to me. So these are questions we want to get to the answers to. And what data was used and why did you come to these conclusions? The data give us better choices. It did. And so, you mentioned a couple things that I would like to put into the record if we can. The written guidance from the medical experts that you talked to, I think it would be good if we got something from them for the record to hear.
Well, I certainly can give you their names.
Okay.
I think that I think a lot of what we did, sir, was we did orally. But so I will give you their names,
Okay.
and if I can find the written guidance, we will find it, of course.
Whatever you can do, or whatever they may want to submit, and maybe they can
Sure.
recall what they put together. And I think that would be helpful. You mentioned the Cuomo Commission, and that you had your suggestions, guidelines. I'd like to have that as well, things that were there for reopening. And you did mention that you weren't asked by the previous administration. And that's fine. Maybe that's another lesson learned that, you know, look, we're looking at who are the groups that were asked to weigh in. Okay. Well, was it helpful? Was it not? This is where we are right now. And so these are legitimate questions. So you got the Cuomo Commission. I know you stated that you had contact with Dr. Walensky, and so I would hope that that was submitted to Dr. Walensky, who did ask for your input. But let me just share something here from Hawaii, and it's an exchange between reporters and our governor in Ohio. And the reporter is saying that Governor DeWine, speaking during a hastily called televised briefing, noted that almost every school district in the state agreed to resume in-person classes by March 1 in exchange for teacher vaccines. But he said Friday that a handful of schools where vaccines have been distributed, including in Akron and Cincinnati, have indicated that they will renege on that agreement and delay reopening. Governor DeWine said that while anyone who wanted the vaccination in Akron schools has received one, school administrators there aren't planning to resume in-person learning until mid-March. Governor then was quoted as saying that's not acceptable either. Governor's remarks came hours after an announcement by the Federal Centers for Disease Control and Prevention that there's strong evidence in-person schooling can be done safely as long as masks, social distancing, and other strategies, though not necessarily teacher vaccinations, are put in place to protect against COVID-19. So when I read these things, you know, it seems to me fair to want an explanation as to why several large public school districts in Ohio refused to open in March of 2021, despite having vaccines distributed, thus compelling the governor to take the extraordinary actions to compel them to open. And I just bring up this story because it's there for further discussion. These are the things we want to look back on and ask ourselves why. Why did some schools not reopen? They have the right to explain themselves, but this is where we need to go so that we can be wiser in the future.
Mr. Chair,
and as I said, this is my closing statement, and we're finished.
Yeah.
We're finished.
Sorry,
okay? That's
because
okay.
I could explain Cleveland.
Well,
if you
we
wanted
can
me.
talk about that later. You can
Okay.
send me a letter. This is where we are at the committee, and we're having votes. You know, but this is my closing statement. What I'm saying is that's what this committee is supposed to be about, and I hope it can be that way throughout the rest of it, because we're going to be doing this for a while. So questions will come up, and you can feel free to answer that to me in writing, and I would appreciate that.
Thank you.
And with that, I would say that this hearing is adjourned, and without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days within which to submit materials and to submit additional written questions for the witnesses, which will be forwarded to the witnesses for their response. If there's no further business, without objection, the Select Subcommittee stands adjourned.